We are on to our headliner. And just a reminder before I introduce Joe that we do have a competition that he's kindly sponsored for a month's supply of ugly drinks. So if you want to be in with a chance to win, the details will be in the chat box. So Joe is co-founder and UK MD of Ugly Drinks. It's a water brand on a mission to shake up the drinks industry and provide people with a healthy alternative to overly sugary and sweetened drinks. The brand was launched in January 2016 and can now be found in over 10,000 stores across the UK and the US. And again, if that isn't enough of an achievement, prior to that, Joe was the second employee of Vita Coco Coconut Water and spent 4 years building that brand and the whole category in the UK. Joe has some outstanding experience building two amazing challenger brands, and I really look forward to hearing his story. So over to you, Joe.
Thanks so much. Hopefully you guys can all hear me fine. I caught almost all of Kelly's talk there, and it was pretty amazing stuff. I think I learned a lot, so thank you for that. And I think so much of what she said is obviously incredibly true, and obviously bear in mind there are so many different ways to be a disruptive brand and business. And I think before I'm about to kind of share slides and go into a bit of a presentation about Ugly and what we do, but one thing I definitely stress is that there is being a disruptive brand as such and having a brand identity and brand attitude that is disruptive. But you can also be a disruptive business. And I think the best businesses do exactly that. And BrewDog was such a great example that Kelly mentioned. Like everything they do through a lens of disruption. What can they do differently? The speed that they are able to iterate, turn things around is just incredible. So, of course, they were always a massive influence for us at Ugly. I'm just going to share my slides now. So hopefully people on this call have a bit of an idea of who Ugly is and who we are, but just a quick overview. We are a water brand, originally started in the UK, now in fact bigger in the US than we are in the UK. And I started the brand with my co-founder Hugh, and we started it kind of with a very simple question, because we had the idea for the liquid first before we had the idea for any kind of brand or brand name at all. And the liquid was very simple, but in its own way disruptive, because we wanted to create a liquid which didn't have sugar, didn't have sweetener, but tasted more exciting than water. So very, very simple brief, very simple idea. But when Hugh and I were beginning to discuss this concept, we very quickly realized there was kind of two basic ways to approach this. One being that we would kind of play it safe and call our business what you would expect a kind of lightly flavored sparkling water to be called. So light water or fresh water or something like that. Or we could go down this disruptive route. And for us, it honestly all just started with a name. We wrote down a ton of words that we felt were interesting and disruptive, and Ugly was one of those words. And as we began to build out the concept and the idea, it kind of became our North Star, this idea of Ugly and what the word Ugly really means and does. And it kind of gave us that clarity as the brand has grown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you guys through a little bit of overview of who we are and what our product ranges look like and how we've developed them, all with this idea of being a disruptive brand and doing things differently. And then towards the end of the deck, I'm actually going to show you and give you kind of a bit of an exclusive peek into what Ugly used to be, because a lot of people, I think, and a lot of brands will get up on stage or Zoom calls these days and present these perfect polished decks with these kind of, beautifully choreographed brand documents, but the reality is they don't usually start that way. And if you look at a brand like Ugly at the beginning, to be honest, our I'm almost embarrassed by our brand and our product. But because we had this disruptive positioning and it gave us that North Star, we've been able to develop and over time create the brand as it is today. And the same would be true of so many great disruptive brands. So we kind of started this brand with this very simple concept that soda is dead. And of course, people still drink billions of dollars worth of cola and fizzy drinks, but the popularity of that product is only going one way. It's never going to become more popular again. It's only going to be declining. And we just felt like it was something that was so obviously going to be happening, and an area that we could have an impact and change things. So we in particular recognize that a younger consumer, Gen Z, millennial, Gen Zennial is a word that we either stole or made up, I can't remember now, but they just don't drink soda in the same way that people used to. And on the one end of the spectrum, they might be drinking kombucha and green juices and cold brew coffees, but realistically, we don't feel like those kind of products are super scalable in terms of price point and also kind of taste profile. So, and one of the fundamental beliefs we have always had is that everybody still loves and will always love that kind of cold can moment that you get popping a can on a hot summer's day. We're obviously, as any disruptor brand, we are taking aim at the biggest businesses and brands in our space. And, some of these brands are amazing brands. And you look at a brand like Coca-Cola, one of the world's most iconic brands, but fundamentally they've been doing the same thing for a very long time. These two Coca-Cola ads, about 70 years apart, same thing, like beautiful, healthy looking women drinking Coca-Cola in the sunshine. It's just not a message that is relevant anymore. And I guess on the extreme of the spectrum, we've seen some pretty high profile, spectacular failings of some of these big soda brands in terms of how they have tried to communicate with younger consumers. So we built Ugly from day one for a kind of younger, more positive consumer, and what they really crave from brands is authenticity and the truth. And in this kind of crazy world we now live in, the truth is surprisingly hard to find. So we had a central idea that we actually developed our whole brand around, which was a George Orwell quote that's on the screen now. The quote is, "In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act." And we felt that was incredibly relevant to the food and drink industry. Everybody who is in this industry is aware of the murkiness around claims and ingredients and things like that. So we set out to start this thing and fundamentally tell the ugly truth in everything we do. So, we felt like we existed in this tipping point, this global tipping point when it came to beverage and the way people consume. In 2017 was the first year in America that water sales outstripped soda sales. So, with all that in mind, we launched our first range, which in the UK looks like this. Hopefully you guys have seen these cans. You can get them in Tesco, Sainsbury's, Whole Foods, Ocado, places like that. Very, very simple product, but all aimed with this at this goal of disrupting soda and giving people an option that hadn't really existed in this market previously. But because we launched this brand with a concept of disruption, it's really allowed us to extend the idea of the brand and the business and begin to scale our platform in such a way that, it has spiraled so much since that first idea that Hugh and I had. And that's what I kind of want to begin to just take you guys through and show you how we thought about it. We wanted to build a platform of disruption, basically. And so the way we looked at that in the beverage industry is kind of right products, right brand, right time. And that has informed how we have grown our portfolio. So in the US now, and hopefully some of you guys have seen this, the second product range that we launched is called Ugly Energy. And I'll run you through, I guess, a very brief explanation of how we got to launching this product. And I think hopefully everyone will agree that whilst being a completely different product to our core range, because it is remained completely true to our our principles of disruption and what it means to be ugly and the ugly truth, this product range is able to kind of slot into our total business and brand portfolio almost effortlessly. So with most disruption, it starts from a place of looking at what's happening in the market, and particularly the big boys. So no different in this case. We looked at energy drinks. It is a part of the beverage category that has continued to grow, even as the macro suggests that people are looking for healthier drinks. Energy is still growing like crazy, and main reason for that is young people love these drinks, and also people need energy. We all live these crazy hectic lifestyles, and people are looking for any kind of edge that they can get, and so energy drinks have continued to flourish. And the problem is, of course, obvious to most people, that they are almost always filled with sugar and or artificial ingredients. The size of some of these drinks, if you buy a 500 ml can of energy drink in the UK, the amount of sugar you're consuming is scary, really. So you've got, on the one hand, this product that's ripe for disruption, but also, and in a way almost just as important for us, a sort of marketing and brand positioning that is often incredibly toxic. So, real kind of focus on masculinity or this kind of thing, which, again, based on who our ugly consumer is, we just don't think this is what people want to see anymore, or at least some people. And so, we see these macro trends, we see what's happening. Consumers are demanding healthier options. They're demanding transparency. And this all ladders back to our concept of the ugly truth. And so this allowed us to launch this range. So it is a very simple product, in that it's flavored sparkling water with no sugar, no sweetener, no calories, just like core ugly. But we add caffeine that comes from green coffee extract. What that means is you get 160 milligrams of caffeine. So that's pretty punchy. That's a strong coffee, without any of the bad stuff. And, this whole range is built around this idea of the ugly truth, transparency. It all ties back to what we do, but it suddenly allowed us to play in all these different spaces, whereas our core sparkling water is predominantly in grocery stores and supermarkets in the US. This range in particular has allowed us to really open up and play in the kind of C-store convenience world. So it allows us to further our purpose and our mission, but in a slightly different way. Which leads me on to, again, another range that we have just launched in the US. And again, it all kind of feeds into this idea of disruption. We are a disruptive beverage company that want to play and have positive impact anywhere along the spectrum of being a water company. And so another thing that seemed pretty obvious to us is you've got bottled water sales that are continuing to grow and grow and grow, but at the same time, huge pressure on the environment and huge awareness around that pressure on the environment. We recognize that. We recognize the negative impact it has on the world that we live in. And it just seems almost baffling that still to this day, the drinks fridge is full of plastic bottles that in almost every case are shipped from all over the world. Having a plastic bottle of water that has come from Fiji is just an insane concept, and being able to buy it for, £1 or something. So, not only is this water being shipped in from all over, as usual, and as with anything, you get these kind of big brand campaigns with lots of ridiculous promises. But the reality is, people are beginning to realize the negative impact of these products and brands. And the ugly truth is, unfortunately, our ocean is just full of plastic at this point. So again, our ugly positioning has allowed us to have impact and play in this space. And, we came up with a concept that is incredibly simple. And it's a water brand that exists in a can, is infinitely recyclable. You can see on this slide here, this is what the can looks like. This is a still product. We have a sparkling product as well. And very simple, it is literally water in a can, but all underpinned by this same mentality of disruption and challenging the incumbent brands in this space. I'll touch on it in a moment, but everything we do at Ugly, we're kind of underpinned by this platform of the Ugly Truth, which we back up with strong partnerships. So what we now have as a brand and business is this platform of products that right now looks like these three areas that in the not too distant future could easily look like more, because we almost have permission to play in multiple areas as long as we're staying true to those principles of disruption. And everything we do as hopefully all great brands do comes from our kind of consumers and the people we're trying to speak to. So, we know that, we want to speak to, maybe we stole this from Oatly, another great brand. They talk about the post-milk generation, and for us, it's the post-soda generation. People who recognize that those products that maybe they used to drink or their parents drink aren't good for them and aren't good for the world, but at the same time love something about the sort of brands that tend to occupy that space and the sort of experience, that cold can moment that is associated with it. So, we know who our consumer is, and that makes it that much easier to talk to them. We, again, as with, I think, all good disruptor brands, we know and we accept, and it's very obvious to us that not everybody likes Ugly and loves Ugly, and we're fine with that. And if you're trying to appeal to everyone, then you're inevitably going to fail, and you're not going to have cut through. So we very purposefully have done that from day one. We always talked about this idea of, it's a concept from the music industry, the idea of 1,000 true fans. So what it means is that as a musician, once there's 1,000 people who are willing to pay for your music, whether it be by paying for tickets to go to your gigs or downloading your music and paying for it, at that point you can become a professional musician. So you should work towards having 1,000 true fans. That is a concept that we had from day one at Ugly. We knew that some people wouldn't like it, wouldn't get it, but we also knew that some people would love it and really buy into our concept and allow us to be a brand that really transcended what is a very simple product in terms of the liquid in our cans. So I mentioned that everything we do is sort of backed up by hopefully a genuine sort of partnership and desire to kind of help make the world a slightly better place. And so we partner with charities and foundations in every area of the business. So our core range, sparkling water, we work with a charity called Girl Up, which is an amazing gender equality charity. Our plain range, I just showed you guys, we work with Oceanic Global, which is a charity that aims at tackling plastic pollution in the ocean. And on our energy range, we work with a foundation called the JED Foundation, who promote positive mental health in particularly young adults, arguably kind of the demographic that are most targeted and affected by energy drink advertising. And hopefully what that all means is the Ugly brand has the ability to play in this space between the sort of clean, natural world. There's lots of products out there that are very healthy, but also this mainstream sort of brand experience that people love. And that's kind of what we design the brand with in mind. And when it comes to, you can maybe tell some of these slides are a little bit Americanized, but as we're having conversations with, massive mainstream US retailers, the way we position Ugly is that it has the ability to transcend being a kind of coastal Whole Foods brand, which is what a lot of, US brands struggle to escape from, and become a kind of mainstream, fully accessible, affordable brand across all of America. Following in the footsteps of some of the brands on the left, like Bang and White Claw, who have grown like absolute crazy in the last 5-10 years or so. So that's just an overview of almost who we are, and how we take the idea of disruption and being a challenger brand and try and apply it to everything we do. What I'm going to do now is take it back and show you guys how we started, because hopefully, I don't know exactly who's in the audience, but if anyone is thinking about starting a business or a brand, I think it would be incredibly helpful to show what this looked like at the beginning, because it looked very different to how it looks today. So when we first launched this business, Hugh and I had almost no money, and any money we did have we put into the business. And we had this idea of ugly, and we had the idea that it was going to be disruptive and change everything. But we, of course, and at the time, we, of course, thought we knew everything, and that we were going to launch this thing and it was going to take off. But if you look now, you'll probably agree that that we were deluded, and we accept that now. This is our first ever logo that we first launched into market, and the product looked like this. So I'm sure if you've never seen this before, you'll be surprised to see that ugly was in a plastic bottle. This product is very different to the product we have today. It's a still product. And obviously in that plastic bottle, we launched this into one retailer initially, which was Selfridges, and these are some photos from that initial launch of Hugh and I. Obviously, yeah, thought we were on to the next big thing, and had all these, all our friends and family told us it was all amazing, to tell the ugly truth, because that's what we promised to do as a brand, we actually had a product issue. So we were working with the manufacturer. We put this thing out into market. We had it into about 50 stockists. So obviously started very small. And then we had this liquid issue, which meant we pulled the product. And in that act of kind of pulling the product, you can imagine it was, like at the time, sort of one of the worst days in my life, like this business that we'd been building towards for all this time. It had all gone wrong. But we forced ourselves to kind of step back and ask ourselves why we'd start the business in the first place. And it was all from this idea of challenging, disrupting, hopefully making the world a slightly better place. And so instead of just rushing back with the exact same product and brand that we had originally launched with, we took the opportunity to almost rethink and reset and treat our what was essentially a failed launch, treat it as a sort of soft launch as such. And I think there was three things that we really learned. First one was we'd named it ugly, and we had this sort of disruptive name, but actually if you look at this product and the packaging, it doesn't look that disruptive. It's actually kind of, quite pleasant, and, watercolors. The execution of the brand didn't quite live up to the name, and we felt like that was something we had to fix. The second and very obvious thing was we never really liked the idea of being in a PET plastic bottle, but at the time it felt like that's what you had to do if you're a water brand. We didn't have the money to go deep on R&D, and so this was our kind of MVP that we launched with. But again, never quite felt right, and was something we were keen to change. And the third thing was, this was a great product. I love drinking it, but so many people said to us in that first month, "Oh, you guys should do a sparkling version. If this was sparkling, I'd drink it instead of my Diet Coke at 3 p.m. in the office." And so we collated all that feedback. We learned from it, and although we basically still had no money, we decided to pivot the business slightly, and instead of being a still product in a plastic bottle, we became a can flavored sparkling business. So because we had no money, we basically just got some friends to rejig the original design work we'd done. So this cost us almost nothing. You can see the logo here and the cans. I think the brief was something along the lines of make it look so shit that it looks good. So this is what it looked like. We could only afford to run 2 flavors at the time. It had this foil on top, like a can of San Pellegrino. And we launched almost exactly 6 months later. We launched back into Selfridges. This is photos from launch day 1 2.0. And again, everything we did just came from that idea of disrupt. So that doesn't just mean in terms of brand and packaging, but every kind of thing we did, whether it be marketing, whether it be our sales channel approach, we came from this idea and concept of disruption. We did everything very sort of hands-on, kind of got stuck in ourselves. Some of the photo, the bit bottom middle photo here is our first office, which was a little shipping container. We used to go around and sell all the product ourselves and with our very small team. I think the top left was a picture of us sort of activating Fashion Week. Obviously, we had no budget to really do this. So again, it was just us handing out cans. But the experience of the first Ugly 1.0 and then Ugly 2.0 kind of, whilst it was pretty scrappy startup stuff, it gave us the confidence and gave us the clarity that the mission we were on in terms of disrupting sugary soft drinks was a kind of a very true mission, and one that a lot of people felt very passionately about. And it allowed us to prove out concept and get the business to a level where we're able to raise enough money to really then begin working with a proper design agency and visualizing some of the ideas and concepts that Hugh and I had. And this bit, I think, is where you see the Ugly brand really come to life. And I'll just kind of take you through the process. I think it's quite interesting of how we figured out what our tone of voice was and what our aesthetic was. So we obviously had these big goals as a business. We wanted to tackle sugar and help build a healthier nation. We wanted to take on some of the biggest companies and brands in the world. We, as a chill beverage brand, we play in pretty much the most competitive part of the store, where it's very difficult to get traction. And we also had this big goal to take on America. You look at water and water products, and it tends to look a little bit like this one. And we obviously were in a can. It's completely set us apart. So as we were kind of going through this process, we realized that whether it was purposeful or not, everything we'd done from day one had been through a lens of disruption and almost subversion. So, calling our business ugly makes no sense. There are a lot of people who advised us not to do that. Putting water in a can, again, made no sense when we did this, 4 or 5 years ago. And again, a lot of people told us not to, and obviously we'd initially launched it in a plastic bottle. And most water products and brands have a huge emphasis on provenance, where the water comes from, where in the world, is it spring water? Again, this was something that for us was a very purposeful decision and choice to not be a water of a certain origin, so that this brand could scale up in a way more similar to a Coca-Cola, for example, without having to ship product all over the world. And one of the things that we began to realize, this idea of subversion, it does upset people, and people can react the wrong way. And as we were kind of deep diving into brands, I actually, for anyone who knows me, I love The Simpsons, and I have still to this day a big Homer Simpson sticker on the front of my laptop. And our agency we were working with kind of ran with this idea, because we realized that, I guess, the most subversive characters out there, or people out there, are often cartoons, and because cartoons can do things that real people can never do. And if Stuart Griffin or Bart Simpson were real actors, they would not be able to do some of the stuff that they do and get away with. And this was an idea that immediately kind of struck home with Hugh and I, really kind of connected a little bit to the way we see the world. One of the photos I showed you guys earlier of us launching in Selfridges, we're all there sticking our tongues out. This is the Ugly team at the time. It wasn't something that we planned to do or coordinated. That was just who we were as a business. We kind of, in a not too serious way, stuck our tongue out at the rest of the industry, at society. We did things our own way. This was a piece of POS that we made on the right-hand side. Again, it's super lo-fi. I cringe looking at it now. But this idea gave us our whole brand identity. The Ugly logo, if anyone hasn't noticed, the U is a tongue, and it kind of threads through everything we do. It underpins this idea of the ugly truth, and comes through in obviously all of our characters. And these cartoons allow us to communicate messages and have a bit of fun in a way that probably a lot of food and drink brands aren't able to do. And so I'll begin to wrap up, because I'd love to answer some questions, of course. But really, kind of all this ties into, for us anyway, our plan, whilst we wanted to be disruptive, and actually something I slightly disagree with Kelly on, when Kelly said that BrewDog are maybe too big to be a disruptor. But in my view, I think you can be the biggest company in the world and still be a disruptor, as long as you still act in such a way. And I think there's lots of examples of that. I think Tesla are now the world's most valuable car company, but they're certainly disrupting and continue to disrupt. And the reason they're so valuable is because that's what they do. So for us and for Hugh and I, we always had this idea from day one, even when the business was the what I now see as quite embarrassing plastic bottled products, of building out a kind of playbook of a beverage brand of the future. Do things differently, do things that traditional beverage brands have never done. So, you know, I don't have time to go into all of these, but we've massively overemphasized the idea of online and digital from day one, which for a beverage company was quite unique. And obviously when COVID happened, we were very fortunate to have a very strong online commerce platform. We've always said we wanted to execute kind of omni-channel. We went to, you know, when we were still relatively small in the UK, we went to take on the US because we recognized that's where we could have the biggest impact and where the biggest and best beverage brands are built. We've always kind of stayed very true to targeting that sort of younger Gen Zennial consumer. We want to play in these kind of fast growth categories like water and energy and plain water. We have a strong mission in everything we do, so we always partner with a cause that we feel is relevant. We have, as a brand, we have you know, a strong attitude, and we're not afraid to have an opinion. And then we have this platform that allows us to innovate in almost any which way. You guys have seen 3 parts to our range today, but there are so many more things that we will do, and we're looking forward to doing to continue to kind of disrupt the beverage industry and landscape, whilst obviously staying true to this idea of ugly and the ugly truth and who we are as a brand. So that is pretty much it from me. Obviously love to answer any questions. If anybody hasn't tried or has tried ugly before, please use the code uglyjoe at uglydrinks.com. You can save 50% because and would love any feedback anyone's got.
Great, thank you, Joe. That was fantastic, and I think what was really great was that you backed up with examples, lots of things that everyone had learned in the earlier talks, from packaging and branding best practice, from the importance of knowing your consumer and market research, which you also showed, to also some of the stuff Kelly was talking about in terms of being disruptive and having a really ownable and memorable brand. So it was a really, really great way to wrap it up. We've quite a few questions, so I'm going to start with Dawn, who was our Twitter competition winner, Dawn Middleton. It's an interesting one. Is every goal of a challenger brand to eventually become an established brand? That's from Dawn.
So for me, and I touched on this right at the end, I think you can still be a disruptor brand if you're the biggest, arguably the biggest brand in the world. And I think it's all about mentality and mindset. And you know, someone like Amazon, again, like, they are very disruptive in the way they approach things, and as long as that remains, they will continue to grow. You know, and there are people, of course, who will begin to disrupt those brands, and there will be craft breweries that will look at BrewDog and accuse them of being mainstream. But you can't deny that BrewDog see the world through a disruptive mindset. And so for me, that will always help them, you know, survive and prosper.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that campaign through COVID was so disruptive, both in execution and mindset, and they wouldn't have done it without that mindset. So thank you for that. Nikki W, how did Ugly engage the retailers with their challenging tone of voice and get their buy-in? Did they, or did you do anything unique or fun to really stand out from all the other emails and samples retailers receive? I know you touched on this earlier, but maybe a bit more color on that would be great.
For sure. And it's a great question, because we definitely have some challenges. I'll be honest, we had some retailers, for example, Waitrose in the UK, and I would say a very specific buyer who just couldn't get her head round our positioning. And deemed it to be very un-Waitrose. And it was just interesting because there are so many examples of brands who have very strong positioning, but obviously have been able to transcend into the mainstream, and Waitrose work with. And in fact, we don't yet work with Waitrose, so that's still one that's rumbling on. But it's in my experience with this brand, it's usually more of a personal reaction. And obviously, any good buyer, in my opinion, obviously thinks about consumers and not their own opinion. I think the great thing about being a kind of digitally native brand is we have a ton of data, and we can show buyers and we can show people how people interact with our brand and what they buy and when they buy it. And so, fundamentally, we believe that we can back up anything we do, and we know who our consumers are and how we need to speak to them. And so we kind of almost welcome the challenges, and we have quite a lot of fun with them as well.
Good, yeah. Thanks. Question here about the logistics of scaling up, and obviously this is really relevant with you guys taking the bold move to the States quite early in your journey. From Nikki W, how did you work the logistics in the early days and scaling up, because scaling up can be so challenging?
Honestly, it was just really hard, and we made a ton of mistakes and wasted a ton of money doing the wrong things loads of times. I guess one of the most important things about our business has been the idea of proof of concept, and just kind of test and learn over and over and over again. We've done things at times that make no sense, and big brands would definitely not do. And another example I didn't even show in this set of slides is we've launched a limited edition flavor concept in the US, where we will do exclusive drops of flavors. So, for example, we've just done a cherry cola, a sour apple. There's a marshmallow that's launching this week. We do small runs, so we run like 1,000 cases. We sell them online, and it's like a sneaker drop. Like, it drops, we sell out. All the flavors so far have sold out within 24 hours. People go crazy. We get loads of messages saying, I need to get my hands on cherry cola. It's like, there's none left. That's it. And it's for us, it's an idea around just proving out concept. We believe that people would love those flavors, so we test it at a small scale, and actually it's been so successful that we're now taking that concept to mainstream retailers in the US. And there's a bit of work to be done, but hopefully taking that data and actually launching some of those flavors, like cherry cola flavor, in mainstream retail. So I guess my advice on the question is just like, try and de-risk and start small-ish if you can.
Yeah, great. Good bit about the obviously, because you guys have been so digitally focused, being able to test at small levels is really good insight. Samuel Williams is trying to disrupt the rum industry and has seen bigger brands take some of our ideas. How have the bigger brands reacted to your rise, and did you face any of this?
For sure. We have been, I guess, we in every which way, of course, any brand that sees any success will be, pushed and bullied, and other brands, particularly big brands, will try and kind of steal your space or block you from retailers. And to be honest, if you do have a disruptive positioning, it just helps. And if you have a true fan base that you've been able to build, again, it just helps, because authenticity is everything. And if you have a legitimate, if you have a kind of a legitimate claim to some IP, it just makes the other brand or business look bad in most cases. So we've had a couple of examples where brands have so unbelievably blatantly copied our aesthetic. It's insane. And the first time it happened, we got really kind of over angry and excited, and what are we going to do? We're going to sue them. But actually realized, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, those brands will never prosper because they don't own a personality. They have just simply kind of stolen someone's. And so we just kind of in the end decided to ignore it, and obviously look back, and 12 months later those both of those brands I'm talking about don't really exist anymore. So
yeah, great. Yeah, something you touched on earlier. It's a question from Dawn on Twitter. You touched on one of your lowest points. Dawn's question is around the most difficult challenge you have had going up against the big brands in your particular sector. So maybe what's been the toughest thing to date?
Oof, so many, honestly. I think our biggest challenge, honestly, is we're not very good at. Hugh and I have been very ambitious with this brand, and I don't mean in such a way that we want to, be billionaires or anything like that. It's more just that we love this brand and we believe that it has the potential to be a global brand, and therefore we push ourselves to not stay in the comfort zone of UK retail. And launching this in the US at the same time has been incredibly challenging, and splitting our team. So Hugh now is based in the US. We have a team in the US, team in the UK, and just managing essentially two different businesses at the same time, and also trying to keep them consistent and globally aligned is incredibly difficult and challenging. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to anyone. Unfortunately, my working hours basically just go from they just go all day because the US is awake all evening. So
no wonder you created energy drinks.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, look, I think we'll leave it there. We're coming up to time. So Joe, look, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. It was a fascinating insight and story, and what a story. And I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes next on the next chapter, because it looks like it's about to get even more exciting. Just a reminder to everyone,